So we're going to take a look at beat mapping. We're using beat mapping mainly to align the tempo to an existing loop. And so we started out with this, I'll start out with just a really simple drum beat here. I brought this loop in, and when we play it, well, clearly that's not at 120. Okay, so we'd like to know what tempo this is. And there's a couple of ways we could do this. So we know it's 2 measures long, so we could just start lowering the tempo until we see this fit here, but that's kind of an imprecise way. Now another way of doing it is to go down here and select the metering plugin, and you select the BPM counter. And you can see that as it's listening, it comes up with a fairly precise tempo in 88.7, so we could go ahead and pull this down to that. And we're pretty close. We might want to actually go in here and change our tempo to 7 like that. And you can see that now it's an exact 2-measure loop, and if we wanted to prove that, we could just put our cycle in there and make sure there's no glitch. So that's one way of determining the tempo. When the transients like that, the attacks are that clear, it's pretty easy to do it this way. Now when the attacks aren't quite as clear, such as in classical music, the BPM counter doesn't seem to work so well. You can see that as we play this, the BPM counter doesn't really figure out what's going on. So that doesn't help us very much. So we're going to end up doing this a little bit more manually. And to do that, we're going to go ahead and open up. You can see I have my global tracks opened up, but we also need to show the beat mapping track. And if we take a look at it, you can see that it's analyzed this and decided where it's hearing the transients. But you'll also notice that it's not really hitting it where we want it to hit. It's not quite nailing it, so we're going to have to do something about that. Now, back here, we have lots of transients, and this is way too many for a beat mapping to adjust the tempo. So we want to start reducing them. You just kind of click and in this case, I don't really care if I get too few because I'm going to have to draw them in manually anyway. So I'm just going to get rid of the ones that make it so I don't have so many of them, and then I'll go in and fix that. But now to edit these, we can't really edit them here. We have to go ahead and go into the audio file editor. So we have that right here. We have to turn on transient editing mode. And so we're going to start off and we go back and listen to this. And actually, I don't need to be zoomed in quite so tight, so I'm going to pull that out a bit so I can see a little bit more clearly. Okay. Now, I want my first transient to be right there, and so to hold the command key down, you'll see that my cursor turns into the pencil, and I just draw that transient right in there. And so I'm going to mark places where I think the tempo has to really kind of lock in. Okay, and so here's where I think it needs to lock in again. And I want to catch that attack right there. So. And right there as well. And I won't necessarily have to lock into these, but these are just places where I'm guessing that I think that I'm going to want to lock it. there again. This one's a little tricky because you can, as strings come in, they don't have a really strong attack. In fact, this has got that very slow attack. So we have to decide where we think the beat is. And so I'm going to put it right about there. Now, if we don't like that, we can always slide it a little bit left or right by just clicking on it. And if you need to get rid of one, you double click it. And it goes away. Okay, so I'm going to go through and put in all of the transients that I need, and then we'll come back and use that to create our tempo map. So I've entered in all of the transients that I needed. You can see that at the very end where the big retard occurs, I went ahead and marked in by the beat, and so I can follow along with that. This one here is off just a little bit. I think we'll pull it back just a bit more. And we can move them around. So I have a few more that built in when the tempo is changing quite a bit. So we'll close this, and you'll see that all those markers now are located in our beat mapping track. Now, one other thing that we haven't done yet is that we haven't actually set up our time signatures. So let's go ahead and do that too. This starts out in 5/4. Okay. And then our next measure is in 6/4. Our next measure is back in 5/4. And we do that for, oops, it's supposed to be a 5. There we go. Okay, so I'll put in all my time signatures just like that. And then we're going to go ahead and line up our beat map. So with all our time signatures in, now we're ready to go ahead and create our beat map. The first thing you need to do is, if you've already imported the MIDI file, so that you already have MIDI in there, you need to turn on Protect MIDI, because otherwise it will change where all the MIDI events happen, and none of this will make any sense. So we want to set this to Protect MIDI so that the timing of your MIDI events remains constant to the tempo that we set. So you turn on Protect MIDI. Okay. And now we're going to go in, and what we're going to do is, the first thing we need to do is we have to get a basic tempo here. Now it's just so, the easiest way is just going to go through and count a little bit and see where it ends up. I'll just tell you that right off the bat, this one started around 83, 84, something like that. Okay. And so now we're going to listen to this, and each place that, and we can go ahead and zoom in maybe a little bit more too. And you're going to see that each one of these markers should be lining up to a beat. And you may or may not decide to move this. It's up to you. But we don't want to overdo it. And so we'll start out with here. Okay, so we're just slightly off here. So you click in the time ruler first, and then drag it to the transient. And you can see that it adjusts the MIDI tempo. And so it adjusts our tempo, and it pushed us up to 83.3. Okay, so all right, and so now we're just a little late, so we're going to do the same thing, and you can see that again it's going to just change our tempo, so now we have a slightly slower tempo there. Now that nail was right on it, so I'll just leave that one there. But I will go ahead. Oops, didn't want that one. And do that. And now that when I did that, I ended up being off just a little bit. So we'll go ahead. And tighten that up just a little. Okay, and so now this is a really late one coming in, so he's slowing us down here. We might find that we would actually want to add in a couple of more transients in here to make that tighten up a little bit. So That seems about right. And now it should be on the downbeat right there. Oops. So our tempo is going to change again a little bit. See, we got a little fast. So you go through and make some decisions, and sometimes you'll look at it and just say, you know, there's really no point in making a move here. And other times you'll make the moves. If you don't like one, like you see that one's a little too much. I don't think I want that drastic a change there, so I'm just going to take that one out and get rid of that. Let's try just moving this one and see if you adjust one, you will often get the others to move about where you'd like them to. Yeah, that one's pretty good, right? And so he's pushing it just a little bit there, so we want him to. You can see that's pushing, you can feel it, you know, it's getting a little faster, and so you want to go ahead and help that out a little faster. And see, that got a little faster again. Oops, but we didn't quite hit it. We want to be right on the beat. And so now the tempo is kind of grandiose here, so we really kind of watch what he's doing, what the conductor's doing. And you can see that and by having enough markers in there, right there, I can really adjust it and follow his retard here, which is kind of. That one ended up being a little strange, so we'd get rid of that one. Yeah, that's better. You don't want real big jumps here until maybe the very end. So since he is doing that big retard right there, this one might be the one we want to take out. Let's get rid of that. Okay. And so now we have basically a tempo map. And if you look here, you can see here's our map. So with your MIDI file, it will now play back, because we selected Protect MIDI. When your MIDI file plays back, it will follow the tempo, but it won't change any of the actual location of the notes. They'll still be quarter notes, eighth notes, and they'll line up perfectly, but they won't sound like they're playing perfectly in time, and you're going to get a much better flow to the sound. So the keys to this is, one, make sure you put the markers where you need them. Okay, let's zoom way in here. And then make sure that you don't have any ridiculously huge leaps, unless there is a big retard like it is here at the very end here. But you can see that it's fairly smooth, but it's going to move things around a little bit and give it a much more human feel.